Welcome to the Courage to Be podcast with Tania Vasallo. Before we get into this episode, I want to share with you that I'm on a mission to close the gender gap in the podcasting world so that more and more women's voices are heard. If you feel that this is something you value too, then please rate, review, and share the podcast. And in exchange, and as my way to say thank you to you, I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. All you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course. Welcome back to the Courage to Be, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And we are back with the amazing Penny Zenker. Welcome back, Penny.
Hi, welcome.
Yes, Penny's been on our public podcast. If you haven't listened to her episode, it's a must. You're going to learn so many things about getting focused, about productivity. She shared so many amazing things about her book that came out, her new book at that time, The Reset Mindset. And today, Penny, share with us a little bit who you are, a little bit of your story, and how you got to where you're at right now.
Sure. Well, I call myself the Focusologist in case you haven't listened to the first podcast that we did. And, I call myself that because it's important to understand that it's a daily practice. It just puts us into a mindset where we're committed to the daily practice of being intentional and focusing on the things that matter. So controlling and directing our focus towards more positive, meaningful results. And so, my story is, I had my own IT company. That was my way of focusing on what matters most, is helping people to develop tools. So I was in application development, helping to develop tools to help people to improve their processes. So, it developed from there because that was my passion, is to just help to simplify things. Like, that is what I love to do, is simplify things and free up your time to work on the things that are most important. And that led me, after I sold that business, that led me into coaching. And I mean, it led me a bunch of different ways, but we don't need to go through my whole life, right? But ultimately, it led me into executive coaching and then into public speaking. So, and that's mostly what I do now is, I'm a 2-time best-selling author, and, I'm speaking around the world on these topics.
Yes. Talk to us a little bit about public speaking too, and the fear of that for you at the beginning. We didn't have a chance to go into that. We went in other directions with the other episode, but I know public speaking, they say, is one of the top fears with death and taxes. And I'd love to hear your journey of how you got into public speaking, because going from IT to suddenly you're a public speaker, how do you overcome that fear?
Well, the fear for me was around judgment. So I felt as a child that I was always compared to my brothers and just didn't measure up. I didn't have the grades. I wasn't as athletic. I wasn't as musical. I just felt like I wasn't enough. Right. And so any time that there'd be any kind of judgment, that was a trigger for me. So I guess the way that developed for me as I grew is that if I was in a big audience, like, I have a big curiosity and I'm very matter of fact. And if I was in a big audience, I'd want to ask questions if we had the opportunity to ask questions. But even the thought of asking questions would make my heart like beat outside of my chest. And I'd be like, I feel like everybody's already looking at me. And then maybe my question is stupid. Maybe I missed it and they already said something about it. Like, just kind of me judging myself as to what I was going to say, like, in preparation. But somehow, I'd be like, and I'd sort of, maybe I didn't raise it that high, but, I would raise it. And sometimes I was called on, and I could swear that everybody could hear in my voice that I was sort of, just that voice where it's very uncertain and weak. Right. But I would still ask most of the time, maybe half the time. Let's say, if I think about it, I probably asked about half the time, depending on the audience. And, I think that as it was time for public speaking, that to me was all about, you're the center stage. So everyone is looking at you and potentially judging you and what you're saying. And early on in my career, I spoke on a couple of stages is when I was doing the public speaking part of things. And there were very critical feedback that came from the group. So it was very hurtful, like, and they were, I don't want to call like jackals, right? They were heckling, like it was weird in that particular environment. And of course, at the little sign that I was being judged, then we shrink and then it gets worse, right? And I think that was a good experience for me. And I think the interesting thing is I saw someone post recently that you have to push through even when you fear. And I think it's the person who pushes through and is courageous through that fear, that's exactly where they're supposed to be, right? Is that there's something in you that my desire to make an impact and make a difference was greater than my fear. So I just did it. And then, the first few minutes when I would start, I would feel that shaky. So I would find strategies to help me be more stable in those initial moments. Like if I started with a quote for some reason, it made me feel more grounded because a quote is factual. You can't argue with a quote, right? It is what it is. If this statistic said that 70% of, change transformation events fail, then that is what they say. So that helped me. And so it's like finding those strategies that help you through those weaker moments so that you can step into those stronger moments. Because sure, once you get into your passion, then you're let loose, right? And if you've practiced, like if I've practiced when I get on stage, there's another sense of confidence that comes that makes me able to handle whatever might happen.
That's fabulous. Thank you for taking us through that. I mean, how hard that must have been for you, fearing that judgment and suddenly, you're getting the hecklers. It's like, wait, no, that's like the worst nightmare. But like you said, you went through it in order to grow, to become good at your craft. That's fabulous. Good for you, Penny. So tell us a little bit about the reset mindset. This is your new
Sure.
book that just came out, and you were going to talk to us and teach us a little bit about understanding how to identify and leverage the reset moments. Can
Sure.
you share with
Yeah.
us, please?
Yeah, let me do that. And let me do it in the context of the same story as well, actually. So there was a point in my career when I was coaching the Tony Robbins organization where they were looking for someone who could come on stage and they only had like 2 slots available. A lot of people signed up, but I thought, I'd been through this and I felt like I should do it, right? It'll give me an opportunity instead of one-to-one to really make an impact at a greater level. And long story short, I didn't get it. I didn't get it. And in that moment, when it shrinks you and you think, what does this mean? The reset mindset is about noticing what meaning you're giving it at first and allowing yourself to reset, meaning consider other opportunities of what else could this mean and what else could this mean? So stepping back away from the emotion that you feel around that circumstance, then getting some perspective on this, what else could it mean? What else could this mean? And then realigning around the best next steps. Those are the 3 steps of the reset practice. And I did that by, feeling myself being upset and like, okay, I need to step back away from this, me saying that this isn't for me and da da da. But by stepping back away from the emotion, I said, well, maybe I'm not meant to use their content. Maybe I'm meant to have my own voice and use my content. Maybe that's the direction that I need to explore, right? Because I'm getting some feedback, but also I'm getting feedback where I am today. Who am I comparing myself against? Okay, I didn't get it. I'm not Tony Robbins and I'm not going to be on stage with Tony Robbins yet, right? Because I'm not at that level. We have to start somewhere. So that reset helped me to reevaluate and so that I could realign and say, okay, I want to give this a go. It sparked something in me. And so I took the next steps and I kept resetting, right? With each time that I got feedback as to what I was doing and how I could do it better, I would reset. It's not personal. It's a way for me to grow. And the more often that we reset and we take these reset moments, which are those moments where we feel overwhelmed, right? Those are signals, or we get feedback. those are the moments that we take that purposeful pause to rethink, to recharge if that's what's needed, and really, then to decide how we want to move forward with that and really be intentional. And so reset moment after reset moment, right? It's like a spiral, like a feedback loop, but it's a spiral because as we're doing it, we're growing and we're learning real time. And that's how I have built this speaking career, is through the reset mindset that I've built over time.
That is fabulous. And it's so important, like you're saying, the paying attention to the meaning that we're giving it. Because like you said, growing up for you, that you compared yourself to your siblings, to your brothers, and that you didn't feel good enough, that they always got the better grades and all these things. And I'm sure many of us can identify with that in one way or another, whether it was with siblings that not good enough for our parents, whatever it is. And we give these meanings at such a young age that most likely that younger version of you that's running the show. And if we
Right.
don't stop and pay attention to this, then we go into these, like spiraling down if we haven't paid attention instead of spiraling up with your resets. I love the image of how you set that up, that you're constantly resetting and you're going spiraling up. I'm going to take a quick pause and we'll be right back. Hi there, I have something really cool for you. I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. You can check out all the details in the show notes. All you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcast, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course. You can also find other free goodies in the show notes. Go check them out. So you mentioned in the previous conversation, comparison, that you were comparing yourself. I don't know if it was with the Tony Robbins opportunity that you're like, oh, but like I should be at that level. Please talk to us. I know you're going to bring so much wisdom and insight into comparison. Penny, please talk about comparison. How can we overcome it? How can we let go of it?
It's one of our biggest challenges because we're always comparing ourselves to others. And there's healthy comparison and there's unhealthy comparison. So it depends on how you're using it. So a comparison of that person's better than me, if you're doing that in terms of how can I learn from this? So this person is, in a speaking career, they've been doing this for much longer than I have, or they've worked with some incredible trainers to help them to get there. If I'm looking at that comparison of what do I like about what they do and what could fit me, but what doesn't fit me, right? Or how could I learn from that talk to be more undulating with my voice so that I'm loud at times, but then I'm soft when I want to explain certain things. So, what can I learn from it is the main gist there. That's a positive comparison that allows us to use it for growth. But when we compare ourselves to say, I'm not good enough, and we make that the meaning out of it, then that's unproductive. And all we're doing is hurting ourselves with those types of comparisons. Because usually, it's like when we put ourselves down, we have to say compared to what? Like, are we comparing ourselves with someone who's 10 years more advanced? What's the real comparison when you say you're not good or those types of things? Usually it's not realistic. So I think it's just bringing ourselves into awareness that we're even doing it. I don't know that I would have even said I recognized when I was comparing myself to my brothers. I don't even think I would recognize it. And today, I don't think my brother would recognize it, but he's super competitive. One of my brothers is super competitive with me, and I'm not anymore. Like, I don't care.
Isn't that fascinating? Because do you attribute that because maybe you've done more of the work and the resets and the understanding of this versus maybe he just got stunted at a certain level of not seeing it from that perspective?
Absolutely. I think that when we build a reset mindset, we come from a place where we're constantly willing and open to reinvent ourselves, to be aware, to look in the mirror and be aware of what's good and what could we change. And just creating that awareness right? It makes us a professional noticer. Then I can notice it's happening and I can let it go and go, this isn't important to me, right? This only puts us at odds with one another. And I don't need that. So if he wants to compete, I just let him win, let him feel like, because it doesn't matter. It's not worth jeopardizing the relationship or, right? So I do think it's from an inner peace, an inner wisdom. And I believe this is my process. So I really believe that it's come from having this reset mindset, is not allowing ourselves to constantly be run by our emotions, but to be run by a place of more intention and clarity.
And to be that observer. From everything that you've been teaching, that you've been sharing in our time together, what I start noticing is your capacity to observe your thoughts, observe your actions, observe your emotions, and how to, just be constantly monitoring that.
Yeah.
Do you do
And there
that
are
on a
times,
regular basis?
yes, and right. I'm human. And that's where we all have to give ourselves permission. We're human. When you make this a regular practice, at first you're going to recognize it afterwards and go, oh, that was a bad situation. I shouldn't have said that. As you practice it more and you go, okay, here's how I could do it different next time. As you practice it more, you recognize it in the moment. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. Let me, because you hear it as it comes out. You hear the energy of the word that you just said, and you said, that's not what I mean. And you can reframe it right there. And then you're going to start to recognize it before the interaction, right? You're going to recognize the bubble in your head wants to say this, and you have that split second to stop yourself from saying that and to reframe it before you actually say it. Now, there's different types of heightened emotional situations. And so, any one of those is great. Even if you recognized it afterwards, you can still go back to someone and say, hey, listen, I apologize for the things that I said. I didn't mean them that way. And here's how I'd like to clarify or whatever it is, but you're still going to get triggered and that's still going to happen, but less, right? And that's the point, is that you're not going to stay in those places too long, or you're going to be more conscious, especially at decision-making points. You're going to be more conscious what's driving the ship here. Like I had to make a very big decision. I was living in Zurich, Switzerland, and I was getting divorced, and my husband at the time was not showing up for the kids. Do I stay in Switzerland where I had my life, they had their life, they were very young, but he wasn't showing up, but I had no support system. My family's back in the US. For whatever reason, I felt like they would be better in the US for various different reasons. Language, I wasn't going to be able to help them with school and different types of things. But anyway, it was really a difficult decision. But when we first got divorced, I said to myself, I'm not going to make any decisions at least for 1 year. So I set a rule, right? I tend to do this, right? I set a rule so that I wouldn't get caught in an emotional trap. I knew that I needed to give myself time to work through the emotion. So a reset moment can be a single moment. It can be, 5 seconds. It can be 10 minutes. It can be an hour. It can be 3 months. Sometimes we need more time to work through things when they are so deeply emotional, and that's okay. And within that reset moment are lots of other reset moments. I had a daily gratitude journal, again, to be a daily reset, to reset all my thought and what I was focusing on so that I could come back to what was most important, which was my children and how I needed to show up for them so that they would feel loved and that they would not feel like they were placed in the middle, and right. And just to really connect with that higher purpose. And that's what kept me intentional. Like you said, it's just continuing to reset whenever and wherever I needed it.
Wow, you are fabulous. Thank you so much, Penny, for just your level of awareness. That's what I pick up from our conversation and our time together, of just how aware you are, just thank you. Thank you is what I have, what's coming to me with our time here. Share with us, where can people find you?
The best place to go is the resetmindset.net. That's where they'll find out more information about my book. And of course, I'm on, all different social channels and whatnot. Reach out to me on any of those channels.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your knowledge, for sharing your stories and your experiences. And my last question, what can our listeners do to live a life with more courage?
Very easy. Make more reset moments.
Yes. I love it. I'm taking that with me and bringing it right through the computer. Thank you so much, Penny.
My pleasure.
Hi there. I have something really cool for you. I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. You can check out all the details in the show notes, and all you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course.